To the USFL show on the Grilly Truth Sports Network. As always, the Grilly Truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. Make sure you check them out at betting.net. All right, we are coming up on week 3 of the USFL season. Week 2, of course, just passed. And the one thing I did notice, week 2, there was a lot more scoring, Joe, which is always good.
Yeah, other than the first game of the week, yeah, it makes it a little bit more exciting to watch a game for the fans. But it's still we have to hit on quality of play again this week.
I think the quality of play was better this week than it was last week.
You think so?
I think it was. I mean, there was more points scored. I watched a lot of the Birmingham game, but here's the thing. I watched the Birmingham game because there's going to be a crowd and there's going to be some kind of interest in that game. And the thing that really worries me, and we've seen this with the AAF, the XFL, all these leagues, the first week, they get great ratings. They got a 3.5 million last week in week 1. I mean, in week 1, 3.5 million. This last week, viewership was down to 660,000 for the main game. And that has to be a huge cause for concern also, Joe.
Yeah. So they averaged 600. What'd you say? 661,000.
It was something like that. Yeah, I know it was over 600.
I think. So I am reading here on Saturday's game against the Philadelphia Stars and the Pittsburgh Mullers. They did draw just over 1 million people for that one game. But throughout the week, they averaged 661,000.
Well, that's the main game. Lost 2/3 of its viewership.
Yeah, it's an abysmal rating, and any league that's going to be on a major network is not going to sustain itself with less than 1 million people.
Oh, bull crap, Joe, because the WNBA does it all the time.
Well, I don't want to get into a political discussion. Why
why is that a political discussion?
Because Mike, anytime you bring up a sensitive subject like that, it turns into a political discussion.
Okay, but it's not to me because this is what the subject comes to. This is what we talked about, how you have to be partnered with the NFL. The WNBA survives because the NBA wants it to survive, or they have to make it survive. And it was the same thing with the NFL. NFL Europe didn't do great ratings, but it was a feeder system for them. So until it got to where it cost them too much money, they were willing to take the loss. That's what I mean here. And without the NFL behind, it makes it difficult. But I don't think the quality of play is terrible in this league. I think it's a quarterback, offensive line issue, and a head coaching issue. The coaching here is not good. And, I mean, the scary thing is the worst coaches are the guys that were NFL head coaches.
Oh, yeah. Well, they were bad coaches in the NFL. The USFL hits all the time. Every time you see an ad or they talk about it, Jeff Fisher, 22-year head coach in the NFL. Well, as we talked before, he's a 22-year head coach in the NFL with 6 winning seasons and barely a winning percentage over 500. So he's not a great coach.
He's better than Hugh Jackson. And there's a reason why
he's – what?
He's better than Hugh Jackson.
Well, I mean –
Well, he is. He could have got worse. I think Hugh ought to coach a team.
Well, Hugh Jackson's not even coaching in the USFL.
I know, but he should be. But instead, I think he's at an HBCU. I don't know what he's doing there. I think he's acting like a football coach there, too. But let's go ahead. Let's look at last week's games. We're going to start off with Friday night's game because it was the most sloppiest between two teams that we saw all weekend. New Jersey and Michigan both have a lot of work to do on offense. The thing that was disappointing to me is the Generals do have plenty of offensive weapons, so it was strange to see them be this bad. Luis Perez, who I thought was one of the top 3 quarterbacks coming into this league, looked out of sorts all night. DeAndre Johnson was arguably better than Perez, but that's not saying a whole hell of a lot. And defensively, I mean, New Jersey's a good football team. This is a team that if they could get the quarterback situation ironed out, they would have a chance to do something, Joe.
I think so. I think, obviously, with all of these teams, most certainly the New Jersey Generals, their defense far outweighs their offense, and I think that is kind of the what we're seeing all over the league. We talked about that last week, but I think that they may have one of the better defenses in the USFL, and if they can get their offense to step it up a little bit, they may have a chance to win 6-7 games. So.
Well, and then we have Michigan, which last week I trashed the Pittsburgh Maulers. Maybe they will win a game. Maybe it'll win 2. It's according to how many times they play Michigan, because Michigan is the worst team. And it's a shame because this is a team that had the first pick in the USFL draft. They could have any quarterback they want, and they picked Shea Patterson. Shea Patterson sucks. He's the Achilles Smith of the USFL right now.
The bar-room brawler.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at him, he looks shaky as hell. Jeff Fisher has obviously not figured anything out here. And every time the Panthers start to put something together positive, they can't finish the job. All right? I mean, they take one step forward, they take two steps back. If Michigan wants to be competitive, I think the entire offensive game plan has to shift. And Patterson has to become more aggressive from the get-go, because I also think what you see with this offense with Jeff Fisher knows that he picked the wrong quarterback, and I think he's really afraid to call an offense here.
The two of the wrong quarterbacks. Let's not forget that. But I mean, what offense do you call when your quarterback goes 14 for 29, completes 48% of his passes, and looks like he is, he looks like a high schooler trying to compete with college level athletes. He's thrown the highlight of the game for him was that final drive where he drove them 60 yards down the field and set them up for a last second score to win the game, which that was exciting. It was good, fun football
until he couldn't finish.
Yeah, until he couldn't finish. Much like a lot of people.
What the hell does that mean? I mean, really? Why are you bringing up Dan Kornhauser on the USFL show?
I like Dan.
I know. Hey, and Dan, remember this. You can follow the NFL Draft tomorrow night live as Dan Kornhauser is there for the Grueling Truth.
Yeah.
He is credentialed. We may be on the air at 1 o'clock tomorrow for a live from the NFL Draft show, but you'll have to keep updated. Follow us along there. Other games from week 2. The rest of the games were all decent games, especially from what we saw the first week when it seemed like everything was under. I mean, everything was over this week pretty much, or 3-4. The guy who stood out to me for the Philadelphia Stars was Brian Scott. And he may be the best quarterback in this league right now as they beat the Pittsburgh Mullers 30-23. So Brian Scott, to me, makes the Philadelphia Stars one of the top 2 or 3 teams right now because he's played really well. And he's one of the few quarterbacks that when I watch the game actually looks like a leader.
Well, and he does, and he was probably the only quarterback all week that threw up numbers that you look at and go, hey, decent week, But here's my question. When you watch him play, does he look like a player that can make it out of this league in the quarterback position onto a roster?
I think is that a question to ask in a minor league?
I mean, I think that's the point of a minor league. We talked about this a little bit last week. What's your goal? Is your goal to promote players out of the league, or is your goal to have a self-sustaining league? Which we know.
Well, I mean, to me,
self-sustaining league.
If you're going long distance, you want to have a self-sustaining league.
Right.
When I watch Brian Scott, I think he's a guy that can make an NFL roster. I don't think he's going to be a star starting quarterback in the NFL, but I would take him over Brandon Allen and guys like that. I mean, my issue with Brian Scott is he sets up with his left foot back instead of his right foot. Right. And he's a right-handed quarterback. That makes not a lot of sense to me. I've seen guys in the NFL do it. Hell, it took me forever to get my own son to stop doing it. But he's got decent mobility. He's a leader. So, I mean, if you look at him last week, 26 for 36, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns, one rushing touchdown. The thing about the Philadelphia Stars is they're one of the few good teams here that their defense has work to do. If the defense catches up and plays better, this is a team that could win a USFL championship.
Yeah, and we're talking about the second week, but Pittsburgh, I don't believe, is a great team. And
no, they suck, and their coaching is horrible.
You allowed 23 points to Pittsburgh, who I don't think should be throwing up 23 points on anybody.
No, maybe an average junior high team that could do it too.
Right. Yeah.
But I think the Stars right now, if you look at them offensively, they've got guys like Josh Banderas, Ahmad Dixon, Channing Stribling, and they've got others too. As this season progresses, I think this offense is only going to get better, and it's enough for them to win a championship here with what we've seen. Now, Pittsburgh, on the other hand, the Mullers, despite the loss, proved a lot of doubters wrong in week 2. They looked completely inept against Tampa Bay. We'll get to them in a minute when we talk about inept. But Kirby Wilson, I guess, deserves some credit, but I still think he sucks as a coach. I mean, but they did get better in week 2. They're balanced on the air, in the air, on the ground. Madri London looks like a solid running back. What's the other guy? Garrett Grosek? Looks like a decent running back. I mean, I don't think there's a threat Pittsburgh is going to come out and win a bunch of games. I think they may win a couple games now, but that's just because Jeff Fisher's in the league.
Let me ask you this. To jump back on the Stars, do you think that their defensive back issue is a called coverage issue or a talent issue?
I think it's a talent issue. When you watch the corners and the safeties, the majority of them do not have great hips. They don't open up the right way a lot of times. I don't think it's a coaching issue. I think that it is basically an execution. I don't think they've got very good DBs.
Okay, I can agree. I tend to agree with that. As far as I'm concerned, when I look at coverage, compared to what professional coaches and what they know and their logic is very different than what I think and what I would call. So I thought, maybe I'm not seeing something, but I tend to agree that it's an athletic issue with their DBs.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really hard to find DBs with good hips. I mean, we're Bengal fans. So over the last 20, 30 years, we've seen all kind of DBs with bad hips. So, I mean, it's hard to get guys that are studs in a minor league. And that'll bring us to Birmingham and Houston, which is a shitty segue, but I got nothing else. I'm just trying to get through here, all right? But Jamar Smith looked like that guy again. His week 1 performance is looking less and less like a fluke, especially after his incredible second half against Houston. The Gamblers boast one of the best defenses in the league, but this does not faze Smith whatsoever. In the second half, Smith was sensational. He finished the night with 246 or 48 yards. He had a pair of touchdown passes. His playmaking abilities are underrated. He's proven to be one of the best quarterbacks, and you trashed him last week, Joe.
Well, so and maybe that is my ignorant knowledge of what I'm looking at. I look at him, and he seems, when he drops back in he seems flat-footed. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, and that's why he'll never play in the NFL. But he's not in the NFL right now. And the thing about him is he has experience with his head coach, Skip Holtz. And across the board, this looks like a complete team. They're the only team, of course, that gets to play in front of a crowd. I think they've already moved the Sunday game for Birmingham to Saturday night, so you get a crowd. It's actually a great move by the league.
Yeah.
And when we look at the other side, we got Clayton Thorson, who I think has become kind of an anomaly because every game with him, and this was like him when he was at Northwestern, when he was in the NFL in preseason, every game there are amazing moments. In every game there are atrocious moments where you don't understand what in the hell he's doing. He made an incredible throw to put Houston back in the game late in the game, finding his receiver deep down the field while rolling to his left, throwing off his back foot. It was an NFL starter throw. But he's not consistent, and that is why he is in this league.
Well, so let me ask you this, Mike. When you see athletic capability like that out of a player, I mean, you have to, as a scout in the NFL, an NFL team, and you see a player do that, you have to at least say, this player has potential. I mean, it's not a fluke because he's done that when he played in college. He does look
he's
very
been
athletic
inconsistent when he was in college. Are you talking about Smith or are you talking about Thorson?
Thorson. So, my question is, why doesn't an NFL team take a chance and say, let's try to develop
They have. He's been in camp. And the thing is this, he's not consistent. And the other thing that people don't tell you about it is most quarterback coaches in the NFL are not actually quarterback coaches. I mean, that's why all of these quarterbacks go out and have their own private coach. You remember James Urban, who was the Bengals quarterbacks coach, right after he was the wide receivers coach for 10 years.
Now, you're not telling me, Mike, that there's nepotism in the NFL and they just hand people jobs.
That's all there is in the NFL is nepotism, and they hand people jobs. And if you don't believe me, you can head over and see for yourself. No, I'm kidding. Betting.net makes it easy to find all the legal online casinos or sportsbook in your state. If you want to get rich, go bet against Jeff Fisher. All right.
Yeah.
So I think this also. Yeah, every quarterback that starts in Division I college football, hell, everyone that starts in NAIA football is a really good quarterback. They have a lot of talent. The issue is this. Being a great anything is more in your own head than it is anything else. Yeah. People are their own worst enemies. I could throw the ball 80 yards, but yeah, I could give it as this. I've coached quarterbacks before that had like unbelievable ability. You watch them throw the ball, they can throw the damn thing 75 yards.
Oh.
Not you. But the thing about it is this. Invariably, when you get a kid with a big arm, which is why a huge arm is overrated for the most part. Achilles Smith and David Klingler had huge arms. They had small brains when it came to believing in themselves. You know, it's really hard to believe that, you know, I really should be an NFL starting quarterback. It's really hard to be Tom Brady. Tom Brady, athletically, probably not as good as most of the guys in the USFL, Joe. I mean, they all could probably outrun him. They probably throw a ball farther. But he just knows who he is. He knows he's going to win the game, and his team follows him. That is what stands out to me about Brian Scott. That's why when you asked me about Brian Scott, yeah, I could see him making a roster because he has that innate ability.
Yeah, well, and I agree with that. Garoppolo with San Francisco, I don't think he's an incredible athlete.
Oh, he's pretty damn good. He can run, too.
Well, I don't. Okay, he's an incredible athlete.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a great quarterback, but I think he has it between the ears, and I think he knows and finds a way to win games. So,
well, that's what guys like that do because they believe they're going to win, and it makes everybody else around them believe they're going to win. Put it like this. When you went to high school, you played at Taylor High School. Taylor High School hadn't had a winning season probably for 20, 25 years before that, right?
Right.
So when you guys played a team like Wyoming High School that goes to the state playoffs all the time, you went in and your coach tried to convince you that if everything went just right, you had a chance to win. While the Wyoming coach didn't have to convince those guys to anything because since they were little, all they did was win. So they went in knowing they were going to win. You guys went in hoping you could win or believing.
Well, our coach went into that game pretty much convinced that the option could win high school football games.
It can, just not at Taylor with a bunch of slow kids.
Yeah.
So when we go on here, it's like I said, I do think the quality of play was better this week. And the sad thing is, no matter how good the quality of play is, those numbers are going to be about what they are the rest of the season, no matter what happens. And Birmingham has a shot to be the best team, at least till they get to the playoffs, because they got the home field advantage. But this week, we will find out for sure. New Orleans played Tampa Bay last week. I thought Tampa Bay coming in was the best team. Mm-hmm. Now, it did worry me that Todd Haley was the coach, but I like Jordan Ta'amu. But once again, another quarterback stepped up. Kyle Slaughter, 266 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, a rushing TD. I think this game was a huge surprise for almost everybody coming into this week.
It was a huge surprise to me. After week one, I pretty much went all in, and I probably shouldn't, and thought Tampa Bay's running away with this thing. They're getting 9 wins, and they're playing in the championship game. But after the performance last week, they didn't look good at all. Their defense didn't look good, and their offense was atrocious.
Well, their offense was terrible the week before when they only put 17 points on Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but they found a way to move the ball.
Yeah, but you got to find a way to score. I mean, you can have a team
I get it.
Get all kind of yards, but if you can't put it in the end zone.
And I thought their defense looked a lot better last week than what they looked this week as well. So.
Yeah, and New Orleans, though, I mean, it's a complete team. Good quarterback play with Slaughter. TJ Logan, Jordan Ellis, I think both help alleviate some pressure off Slaughter because they run the ball well. And as scary as the Breakers' offense looks, to me, the defense might even be scarier. I mean, Tampa Bay is supposed to have one of the league's best offensive groups, but they look completely out of place against New Orleans. Davon Bellamy, Vontae Diggs have been absolute monsters for Larry Fedora's squad. Don't sleep on the Breakers. They can win the South. They can win the USFL.
Yeah, based on their performance this past week, I agree. Uh, I think that I'm changing my tune, and that means they'll probably lose next week, but or this week. But I think New Orleans is probably the team to beat.
All right, we forgot to bring up one thing. Who won the pick 'em last week?
Uh, I think we were tied, Mike.
No, we weren't. You said I won.
I lied to you.
No, then I won.
So between the Michigan Panthers, New Jersey Generals, both you and I took the New Jersey Generals. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, both you and I took Philadelphia. Birmingham
Ah,
and Houston. Yeah, you did. You took Birmingham. I
thank
took
you.
Houston. And Tampa Bay and New Orleans. We both took Tampa Bay. So I think we're actually tied
For
for
the
the
two
year.
weeks, yes, but I won
Yes,
last week. That's the
you
important
did.
part. Okay.
You did.
Now, if you want to bet on the games, you can head over now, see for yourself. Betting.net makes it easy to find all the legal online casinos and sportsbook in your state. Make sure you check them out at betting.net. All right, let's go to week 3. We're going to pick the games with the point spreads and all that good stuff. We got the Tampa Bay Bandits favored by 1.5 over the Houston Gamblers, Joe.
Yeah, I don't know what the I'm gonna take Tampa Bay again. I mean, I know we just trashed them a little bit, but I'm gonna take Tampa Bay.
You trashed them a lot, Joe.
What?
You trashed them a lot.
Okay, I just completely threw them in the trash, Mike. But
Yes, see?
I'm still gonna take them.
All right. I'm going to take the Gamblers. I mean, to me, I think the Bandits will bounce back. I think they looked completely lost on Sunday. I wouldn't put a lot on this game, but I would actually, if I'm going to bet the game, I'm going to take the underdog. Pays off a little bit better. So,
Yeah, point and a half though. That's really
you know
easy.
the best part of the Breakers and why they may be my favorite team now is in the mic'd up section where you can hear Breaker players telling the Bandits to their faces in the game last week that they suck. That probably happened at that Wyoming Taylor game too.
Well, that is one good thing of the USFL that maybe we should bring up is in the NFL you might get a player or two mic'd up for a game and they don't really you really don't hear everything, and really the USFL almost sounds like a professional trash talk league to me because all the teams and all the players are doing it.
So is the NFL. They just don't
Right.
publicize it as much.
And I think that is a good look into how the players actually talk to each other. But there's still that mutual respect there. Yeah, who was the lineman that got hurt? Both teams came over,
Yeah.
and so I mean, there's still a fraternity there. But yeah, the trash talking on the field is absurd.
What's
Go
wrong
ahead.
with that? I mean, I'm
There's
not big
nothing.
on trash talking, but
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's an eye opener for some people.
all right, I think the game of the week has to be the Birmingham Stallions, who are undefeated at 2-0, against the New Orleans Breakers, undefeated at 2-0. This team will have the best record in the league after this. It's the last two undefeated teams. The Breakers are favored by 3.5 points. Joe, I'll make this pick first because it's the hardest one. And I just think from what I've seen with Kyle Slaughter, I trust him more than Jamar Smith, who has been solid. Birmingham's at home, which worries me there too. So my conundrum here is, do I give up the 3.5 points or not? Because I think 3.5 is pushing it. If it makes any sense, if this was 2.5 or 3, I would take the Breakers automatically. The 3.5 does give me a little bit of pause, but from what I've seen so far, even though Birmingham's at home, I think New Orleans is the better team. I'm going to take the Breakers and give the 3.5 points.
I am going to take the Breakers as well, Mike. After that performance last week, the Week 1 performance, somebody's going to have to beat them to show me that team can get beat.
Anybody can be beat, Joe.
Well, yeah, I understand that.
All right, next up, we got the Pittsburgh Mullers at the Michigan Panthers. The Michigan Panthers are favored by 2.5 points, Joe.
Well, pick a team from Pittsburgh or pick a team from Michigan. Can I just scratch this game? Do I have to take a pick?
Sure.
I think they both lose. Um, I'm gonna take Pittsburgh in this game. I will never pick a team from Michigan, Mike.
Pittsburgh gets 2.5 points. I don't know why. I see you hate the Michigan Wolverines more than the Pittsburgh Steelers.
No, I don't. I hate them both.
Maybe you shouldn't hate things so much. It's not nice. Plus, it'll take years off your life to hate stuff, Joe.
No, anger is a good thing in certain situations, Mike.
Only if you unleash it. But then somebody like you will come arrest you.
Well, either way, I don't want to take any one of these teams, but
but if it was somebody like you could probably run away from them and make it. Did you get that?
I did. You called me a fat ass right to my face.
No, I didn't. I said it in a roundabout way behind your back, but where you could see it.
And it came around and hit me right here. And all I heard was, "You're a giant fat ass." That's what I heard.
You're not a giant fat ass. You're not that tall.
I'm going to take Pittsburgh.
Now, Steve Risley has a big head. You thought I was going somewhere else, but Risley's a lot better looking than you, too. I get a lot of comments about that.
And Risley has a national championship, and I do not.
Well, you live in Ohio. What the hell are you going to do?
I don't live in Ohio.
All right, I'm going to agree with you. Well, you did. I mean, I'm going to take... Man, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe Jeff Fisher's ready to ride.
Well, then I'm going to come to your house and drug test you.
No, you can't. You may be a cop, but if you try to come in my house, you're going to get shot, Joe.
I'm not coming in an authoritative capacity, Mike. I'm coming as a friend that wants to make sure that you haven't lost your mind.
Yeah, I'd have to shoot you then. I don't allow company at my house.
Oh. Well, then you're just wrong. Jeff Fisher is
you're
never going to be ready to ride.
You know what?
What?
I think Jeff Fisher's ready to ride like Ron Jeremy, and he's ready to finally get it in there and get him a win. I'm going to take the Michigan Panthers. Yeah, because, Jeff Fisher, Ron Jeremy kind of look alike, only one's fat and like you, and one's not.
Yeah. Well, they both have hair, and they both look like hedgehogs.
You're making fun of me because I ain't got no hair. All right, next up. What?
And one's in prison, one's not.
Really? Who's in prison?
Ron Jeremy.
Oh, what'd he do?
Get this, Mike. Rape.
Really? Why?
I don't know.
Huh.
I didn't follow it that closely.
That's interesting. All right, next up, the New Jersey Generals against the Philadelphia Stars. And that game is a pick'em. What? Did you forget who you picked on the other games?
No.
Look at that. I look sophisticated drinking tea, don't I?
You do. I'm going to take the Generals, only because my boy likes the Generals. I think this game's pretty much a wash. I can go either way.
Who'd you take?
New Jersey.
Interesting. I'm going to take the Philadelphia Stars. That way I'll be up 2 games after this.
Is it really that interesting, Mike?
Hell yeah, Joe. I mean, come on, Joe.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Hey, hell, we're like 30 minutes in. We've talked about Ron Jeremy. You called him a hedgehog. I called you a fat ass. It's been an entertaining show.
Yeah, it's a good show. You're getting drunk on tea. Is that all that's in that tea?
I don't drink.
Is that all that's in that tea is tea?
I don't drink tea. I don't drink anything but tea and water.
That's it.
If you want, we can do a challenge where we both take our shirts off right now, and we'll see which one looks better.
Let's do it.
You're not. I don't want to see your tits. God. I'll tell you. Why would I want to see your tits, Joe?
I was going to show you my tits, Mike. I'm a man. I don't know. Well,
you're a man. That's debatable. You live in Switzerland County.
Jesus.
God.
Hey, I have.
And you know Dave Wolf, don't you?
I do know David Wolf.
Yeah. I used to work with David. He's a good guy. I don't know about
He's a great guy. David Wolf is a great guy.
I worked with him at Lowe's.
Yeah, I think he might have told me that. David Wolf has a great spot to fish at his house. And he never lets me come over there and fish.
Probably not, because as big as you are, you'll eat all the fish.
Oh, God. Hey, I have a serious question for you.
Okay.
So, and I've been thinking about this for a couple weeks. Why are we with the ratings? Why are we in America trying to constantly broadcast and produce these minor league football leagues with the XFL, the USFL, the AAF, the Spring League? Why are we doing this when we have we have what could be looked at anyway as a minor league system with the Canadian Football League? I don't think there's any player
But it's
that's.
totally different football.
I understand that, and when you look at it though, the fundamentals of the game are the same, right? I mean, don't the linemen in the Canadian Football League block the same way as the linemen in the American?
Actually, no, it's not.
They
But the NFL has, or the CFL has a rule where the defensive linemen have to line up a yard and a half off the ball.
see. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that. I don't follow
Yeah,
Canadian
they
football.
have to be a yard and a half off the ball, and that way you're not getting like two big dudes just smacking right away. At a yard and a half off, a CFL offensive lineman will usually be a quicker, more agile athletic lineman, where maybe the lineman will be 285 or 290 instead of 350.
Right, and I know it's a faster game, and there are some rule changes, but I don't know why we keep spinning our wheels because we're going into week 3 here, and I think we do get one season out of the USFL. You said this on our very first show. I don't think we sit here and do a USFL show.
No, we doing an XFL show next year.
Yeah, yeah, and then a year after that, are we going to be doing that? Which we might because they have backing from the NFL. But it seems to me that all these leagues are just spinning their wheels, and it's the same thing over and over and over. You get quality players that you have some defensive players that might be able to make an NFL roster. You have some backs that might be able to make an NFL roster. But by and large, the league is below average when it comes to professional caliber players. And it really stands out when you watch these quarterbacks, or most of them come out and try to play. So, and then your ratings drop by 57%, like they did from week 1 to week 2. And everybody quits watching the game because nobody wants to watch boring football.
I would say this. Everybody wants to own an NFL team. Arena indoor football, guys will start a team. They don't have any clue that it's going to cost $500,000 to $1 million, even in a smaller league, to be able to run that team. They bite off more than they can chew, and they see the NFL do all these great numbers, and they think, well, people will want to watch this all year round. They don't. I mean, there's other things to do in the summer. I mean, the NFL is the NFL. The NFL is the highest level of play. I'll compare it like this. Why don't people want to watch the WNBA? Because it's at a different time of year. They play it in the middle of the summer, and the quality of play, for lack of a better term, is not very good compared to the NBA. So why do I want to waste my money or waste my time watching an inferior product? The USFL, the WNBA are inferior products. Whether you like it or not, and I like watching the USFL. I like watching the CFL. The difference between the CFL and the NFL, it is a different game. The CFL, 3 downs. All your wide receivers can have motion. Plus, you got to remember the CFL is much older than the NFL.
Right.
And that entire country grabs onto that because that's their game.
Right. And there's communities invested.
And there's
the
no
teams.
communities invested here. So what works as a minor league sport? The only thing I know of is probably minor league baseball. But the thing about minor league baseball, you're going to do that usually in a stadium that seats 3,000 to 10,000 people. And you're
Right.
doing it in small communities where those communities latch onto that team. Those teams go out, they go to hospitals, they go to radios, they get involved with the community. There is no community involvement with the USFL because they're not in communities. I don't know how much community involvement there is just in Birmingham because to me, if I'm running this league, what I'm doing is I'm taking all these players, I'm taking them to hospitals, I'm taking them to Special Olympics, I'm taking them everywhere to get them out in the public, to get people to have a reason to care about them. The reason is not just because you're playing football. You're in Alabama. You got UAB right where they're playing. Alabama one way, Auburn the other way. That's better football than what we see. So what you have to do is you have to make the experience great for the crowd. And you have to make that crowd invested. I mean, indoor arena football falls apart because people don't invest in the community. If you invest in the community with your team or your business, that community will usually invest back if they think that you care. And the other thing, if you're putting these players out there, hell, when I was in Evansville, Indiana, we coached a team that drew like crap. Our owner disappeared. We weren't getting paid. So we had the idea, hell, we'll run this on our own. Wrote a book about it, too. You can get it on Amazon called The Rage Within. There's a plug. I wrote that book like 5 years ago. And the thing about that is we started going out. Our last 3 or 4 games, we just took our entire team to the mall. All right? And we had them pass out flyers and talk to everybody. They wore their jersey. Our first game after doing that against Port Huron was to go to the playoffs. And they had to delay the start of the game for 45 minutes because the crowd was wrapped around the building. Because people cared then. You know, right. Dakota Marshall, who's the stud from East Carolina, gave me an autograph. He's shaking my hand. He's playing in a game. I want to go watch him, Mom and Dad. So the next game, what we did is we had 3 or 4 different youth football teams, and we gave all the kids free tickets. So what happens then? Kids want to come to the game. They got a free ticket, so Mom and Dad will buy a ticket. Their brother buys a ticket. Next game, sold out again. You got to do something. They're not doing anything that I see to promote this outside of the Birmingham team. It's a bad business model. It's a good business model when you look at it that you don't have any travel expenses. You don't have any of that. But it's a bad business model because these guys are all stuck in a hotel. Instead of making them pay for their hotel room, why don't their pay for the hotel room just be to go out and talk to people? Wear your jersey. You know, get somebody interested. If you go out there, your son loves football, right? If these games were all played in Cincinnati, and all of a sudden in VV, Indiana, you know, the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Mullers and the running back for the Philadelphia Stars all of a sudden goes to their school and talks to them.
Fan for life.
Yeah. And people will go to the game. Everybody misses that because they're stupid. They look at the big picture and don't realize there's little steps to get there. It's just like when you talk about these quarterbacks that are really talented. They're really talented, but they don't put in the right kind of work because, you know, to start off being a quarterback, first thing that's most important is your feet, and then your hips. Your upper body is not even that big a deal. Your feet and hips got to be right. So if you want to do big things, you have to do the little things right. There's too many people that want to do big things, and they just want to go right to that big thing, and life doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I agree. And you know, it's 2022, and the society we live in is everything. I mean, how long was the NFL around, drawing 200 or 300 people a game, you know, before it exploded? And we live in a society with instant gratification. Everything's got to be big and huge now.
The thing is this: the NFL, when it started off, was in cities like Portsmouth. It was small towns. Now, the thing that blew up the NFL, because the NFL may not have made it if it wasn't for George Halas paying Red Grange an outrageous amount of money in like 1925 or 26. That saved the league. I mean, it completely saved the league. But still, the NFL didn't start to blow up until probably mid to late 50s. Right. And then it didn't really explode until you got to the mid to late 60s. And the thing was, they were smart about it. They did little things. To me, the biggest thing the NFL did outside of Red Grange, which made that game seem more serious because that was considered a joke, pro football, until then. College football was the king. But once they got Red Grange, it got people out. But they did the little things. One of the little things NFL Films. To me, NFL Films was the thing that blew the NFL up. NFL Films, Steve and Ed Sable, that starts early 60s, late 50s. I remember when I was a kid, like early 70s, mid 70s. I mean, there was no ESPN. But on Saturday night before the Sunday games at like 11:30 at night, the local Channel 19, UHF, whoever it was, would show This Week in the NFL. And, you know, they brought you the game differently than anybody ever did before. It wasn't a freaking camera that's jerking all over the place and you can't see what the hell's going on. You know, they slowed everything down. they made the game seem like something bigger than the game. And the problem is that you can't replicate that. The
No.
AFL did a really good job of it. There was an AFL Films, but the AFL worked because they were able to go out and buy players like Joe Namath. And also at the time, remember, the AFL back then had like 12 teams, maybe 14 teams. So there's a lot more talent out there. Right now, if you only had 12 or 14 teams in the NFL, you could put together a hell of a USFL that would compete and they would merge. So times have changed. And I hate to say it because we're on a USFL show, but I don't think this ever works anymore. The only way this works is if the NFL, the NFLPA is involved, the NFL alumni, and they basically, with all their billions of dollars they got extra floating around because they make taxpayers pay for stadiums and stadium improvements, they actually... It's just the way it has to be. There's nobody that can compete with the NFL. You can't. The NFL will kill you. The NFL is literally the mob.
Yeah, and the USFL is never going to compete with the NFL. And when the XFL, which it has the backing of the NFL and the NFLPA, they're not going to compete with the XFL either. And
well, how about this? They say they have the backing, but I don't think that's ironclad right now.
Yeah, right. And I think what I was getting to is I think we all expect we have all this information shoved in our face, right? We got a website set up, we got games broadcast on 2 networks, and we have become a society when we look at sports that it has to be an instant success, and it's got to explode or it's a failure. And we have lost track of the fact that you have a brand new league with brand new teams with old names that is going to take some time to get a fan base in the cities that they're going to be in, and having them in Birmingham, you're a year behind on that. And I think they go into year 2 next year, if there is a year 2, behind the 8 ball. I going into week 3 this year, I'm looking at the ratings, I'm looking at the games being played, I'm looking at the talent level, and I will be very surprised if we make it out of year 1. I think we make it through year 1 because of the money that's been invested. I don't think this happens next year.
Well, the thing is this: they're not going to other cities right now because they don't have owners in those cities. If these ranking or ratings drop and you've got 200 to 500,000 people tops watching these games, who wants to spend millions of dollars on their team?
Nobody.
Well, what'll happen is this: you'll have some people that have the money, but you're going to have other people like the AAF, and it's what killed the AAF. Is you had a lot of guys that were con artists. They claim to have money that they don't have. And then you're going to get 2-3 weeks in the next season, and then all of a sudden you're going to start hearing, well, the players and coaches didn't get paid for that team this week. Yeah. And the next thing you know, that just kind of festers through the entire league, and shit dies. I hope it doesn't. I actually enjoyed this last week more than I did the first week, so hopefully that keeps continuing. I think that I saw more promise out of 3 or 4 quarterbacks in this league that can make it better. I just wish they would get out in communities because I think you could draw more than 100 people to one of those games that doesn't have the Birmingham team.
And I think if they were in different cities this year, they would. I just going down there for week 1. I don't think that there's going to be. Birmingham's not that big of a city anyway, and they're going to support their local team, which they had. I think they had around 15,000 this week. They had 17,500 the opening week. I don't think that's a bad crowd for a minor league sport at any level. And I think that is probably what you're going to get in the different cities next year if we do have a year 2. But I don't think that whether these players get out and go around town, I just don't think people are going to be willing in Birmingham to go to watch 2 teams play that don't have Birmingham across their uniform.
Yeah, maybe just got to call them all Birmingham. You got the Birmingham
Panthers, wouldn't be a bad idea.
The Birmingham Stallions, the Birmingham Breakers play the Birmingham Bandits. Actually, Birmingham Bandits sounds pretty cool.
And then you just split up 15,000 fans that are willing to come to the game. And
so you get 4,000 a game.
Yeah, you get 4,000 a game.
That's a hell of a lot better than 4. All right, remember, guys, betting.net finds the best promotions, offers, and bonus codes so you don't have to. Head over to their website now to take advantage of things like free bets and matching deposits. Check them out at betting.net. All right, Mr. Joe Spilman, we will be back next week for hopefully week 4 of the USFL. And hopefully I'll be up 2 games by then, because it's the only reason I do these shows is to show my dominance.
That's right. You will not be.
I won't beat you. Risley said that for years. He still hadn't won.
I do want to let you know, Mike, that NASCAR goes to Dover this week, and we're going to do a post-race show here on The Grueling Truth after the race.
Okay.
I just want to let you know.
Okay. Are you going to have Ben on the show with you?
Who?
Ben.
Ben who?
Dover, dumbass. That was an easy one. I thought you had hit that one out of the park, Joe.
Welcome to 7th grade in 1989.
That would be so awesome. But I was already graduated from high school in 1989.
I was not.
You weren't in 7th grade either.
No, I wasn't.
You didn't even exist yet, did you?
Yeah, I know, I did. I'm older than that.
Oh, 1988, huh?
No, I'm older than that. You're getting old, Mike.
I know. I was like 9 when I coached
Mike,
you, so it's all right.
Mike, I got gray hair in my beard. That's how old you are.
And all mine's white.
Yeah, see?
That's what I tell people. All right, Joe, we're going to go ahead. We're going to wrap it up. It looks like we will have an NFL draft special live from Las Vegas tomorrow with our man on the scene, Dan Kornhauser, myself, Steve Risley. So make sure you follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Grueling Truth. Follow us everywhere. I don't know. We're all over the place. Right, Joe? Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth, except for the 2 places that they won't allow us anymore because of Joe.
Yeah, I don't think that was because of me, Mike.
Yeah, it was probably Risley. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead. We're going to wrap it up. But for Joe Spilman, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.